Deal with anybody? I mean, I know you worked with people that have addictions. Have you ever worked with people that have like non-chemical addictions, or non-chemical in the traditional sense, like
Oh, yeah.
video game addictions or gambling addictions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm affiliated with an organization called Crossroads that's an Ibogaine treatment center. And we're also building the first psychedelic research institute there. When people go through Ibogaine, it rewrites the neurochemistry. It reboots that whole pathway. And that pathway is set up for an addictive profile. Doesn't matter what the addiction is, it's the same chemical pathway. And so that addiction could be heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine. It could be work, sex, video games, whatever. It's that same chemical pathway that's also associated with what Csikszentmihalyi called flow states. It's that dopamine neurochemical pathway. So when you channel that focus, that prime directive, into a productive way, that can elucidate the flow state. And that flow state's essentially like your prime focus on the current experience to the exclusion of everything else. That's just like any kind of addiction that the mind can't rewrite, it can't move away from. So the definition of addiction is essentially like getting stuck in these repetitive loops with something as the focus. Even in the midst of detrimental experience, you can't shift, you can't break that cycle. So it's doing something over and over and over, even though you know that there's a bad consequence.
So is an addiction essentially almost like a side effect of the process that's involved in us getting good at something? Because I've always found that in getting anything that I become obsessed with, anything that I really start wanting to get good at, it starts to permeate my life, oftentimes in an uncomfortable way, where it's going on that, like Eddie Bravo and I used to talk about this all the time with jiu-jitsu, that you would have like this underlying operating system that was always doing jiu-jitsu. That you would be, if you were in a conversation with somebody and they wanted to talk to you about, well, what the Democrats got to do is, highlight the fact that we've created all these new jobs. You just start thinking about choking people. So you just think, like, this is boring as fuck. I'm going to concentrate on positions in my head. I'm going to nod my head. But the what's going on behind the scenes, the operating system, what's always on is jiu-jitsu. And almost everybody I know that is really good at jiu-jitsu thinks like that. They all talk about how jiu-jitsu becomes almost like a metronome in the background, that it's like constantly going on. And one of the benefits of that is that, well, you have this positive, really healthy, rewarding experience that you're obsessed with. So you're addicted, but you're addicted to something that's super beneficial.
So that differential being that there's a positive outcome,
right,
versus a negative outcome. So you could describe that positive outcome experience, even though it might be an addiction because the mind's so focused on it. It's essentially a flow state. You just keep reaccessing that flow state.
Just reactivating something that, for whatever reason, the way it is engaging with your life and your mind is negative. Like gambling addicts.
Yeah.
Like people who are gambling addicts, they just want that action all the time. So,
and that's one of the hardest addictions
gambling?
to kick.
Yeah.
Gambling, because it's an intermittent reward. You don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Oh.
So sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. Looked
Right.
at from the right perspective, it's
Right.
all negative because of the net loss.
And that's gamification too. Video
Right.
games, same thing. You don't yet know what the outcome is going to be, so there's so much engagement. Heroin, cocaine, those kinds of substances, you generally know what you're going to get.
So you can avoid those because you've experienced it, you know what it is, you know the negative repercussions of it, you can step back.
Well, it keeps people in. Right,
There's
so they
some
don't
physical components of those addictions too. Though,
right,
Yeah.
yeah, particularly, and that's why heroin's so hard to kick. And Ibogaine has like a 70% success rate in helping people kick heroin after one treatment.
That's pretty amazing.